Admiral Kekstar's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display floating before his command throne. The crystalline projection showed scattered debris fields where 3 Zephyr patrol fleets had vanished in the Outer Rim territories. His scaled fingers drummed against the armrest, each tap echoing through the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion. "Another ghost story, Admiral," Commander Yithra said, her voice carrying the typical dismissive tone reserved for human-related reports. "The locals claim a single ship destroyed our forces. 1 ship against 90 vessels." Kekstar's mandibles clicked in amusement. 300 years had passed since the Zephyrian Empire first encountered humanity during their expansion into the Sol system. The humans had put up a brief, pathetic resistance before retreating to their homeworld, apparently accepting their fate as a minor species in Zephyrian space. Since then, Earth had remained quiet, paying tribute and avoiding conflict. How large was this mythical human vessel? Kekstar asked, more for entertainment than genuine concern. "The survivors claim it measured 20 kilometers in length," Yithra replied, her translator adding a note of mockery to her tone. "Witnesses described weapons that tore through our shields like they were made of vapor." The bridge crew erupted in chittering laughter. Even their smallest destroyers measured 8 kilometers. A 20-kilometer warship would require resources beyond human capability. The Empire's intelligence services had monitored Earth for centuries, cataloging their primitive technology and limited industrial capacity. "Perhaps the humans have learned to build ships from their dreams," another officer suggested, earning more laughter. Kekstar stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. At 4 meters tall, he embodied Zephyrian military excellence. His species had conquered 47 star systems through superior technology and tactical brilliance. Humans barely managed interplanetary travel when the Empire first arrived. "Deploy the 3rd battle group to investigate," he commanded. 500 ships should be sufficient to handle whatever primitive trick the humans are attempting. The hologram shifted, displaying the 3rd battle group's formation. Massive dreadnoughts flanked by cruiser squadrons and destroyer screens created an impressive display of Zephyrian power. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes capable of cracking planets. Yithra hesitated. "Admiral, what if the reports contain some truth? Our patrols discovered unusual energy signatures before they vanished." "Energy signatures mean nothing," Kekstar dismissed. "Humans lack the mathematical understanding to develop advanced propulsion. Their largest ships are barely worthy of being called escorts by our standards." The communication array crackled to life. "Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Fleet Command." "Display it." High Admiral Zexton's image materialized, his ancient features bearing the scars of countless campaigns. "Kekstar, I'm receiving disturbing reports from your sector. 3 patrol groups have gone silent." "Investigating now, High Admiral." Local insurgent appeared to be spreading propaganda about a human superweapon. Zexton's eyes darkened. "Do not underestimate any species, Admiral. The Empire's strength comes from vigilance, not arrogance." "Of course, High Admiral. However, our intelligence confirms human technological limitations. They possess no industrial capability for advanced warship construction." "Perhaps, but explain how 3 separate patrol groups encountered the same impossible vessel. Either our intelligence is flawed, or something has changed on Earth." The transmission ended, leaving Kekstar contemplating the implications. Could humanity have developed new technology in secret? The Empire maintained surveillance satellites around Sol, monitoring all major population centers and industrial facilities. Nothing suggested advanced military development. "So, the 3rd battle group reports ready for deployment," the communications officer announced. "Excellent. Order them to the Proxima sector. Full combat readiness." As the hologram displayed the battle group's departure, Kekstar felt a strange unease. Zexton was right about vigilance. The Empire had grown complacent after centuries of easy victories. But humans? They were barely a step above savages when first encountered. "Commander Yithra, review our intelligence files on human military capabilities." "Immediately, Admiral." The data streams reveal familiar information. Human vessels relied on crude chemical rockets and primitive fusion drives. Their weapons consisted of projectile systems and basic energy weapons. Most importantly, their industrial capacity remained confined to their solar system. No changes in the past 50 years, Yithra reported. Earth maintains the same technological level as during initial contact. Kextar nodded, reassured by the data, yet something nagged at his tactical instincts. 3 patrol groups destroyed by a single vessel defied all known combat principles. Even if humans had somehow built a massive ship, it would require thousands of crew members and resources they simply didn't possess. Admiral, long-range sensors detect an energy signature approaching our position, the sensor operator announced. Configuration unknown. Distance 40 million kilometers and closing fast. Velocity exceeds anything in our database. Kextar's confidence wavered. The 3rd battle group was still hours away, leaving the Eternal Dominion with only its escort squadron. Tactical assessment. Single contact. Massive energy output. Estimated size. The officer paused, recalibrating instruments. Sir, the signature suggests a vessel over 20 kilometers in length. Silence fell across the bridge. Every officer stared at the sensor display showing an impossible reading. A ship that size would dwarf even their largest dreadnoughts. Confirm those readings, Kextar ordered, his voice losing its earlier confidence. Multiple operators worked frantically, cross-referencing data from different sensor arrays. The results remained consistent. Something enormous was approaching their position at incredible speed. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies, the communications officer reported, voice trembling. Display it. The hologram shifted, revealing a human face. The alien features seemed primitive compared to Zephyrian complexity, but the eyes held an intelligence that made Kextar uncomfortable. Zephyrian vessels. The human spoke in perfect Zephyrian. You are trespassing in human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Kextar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Human territorial space? You exist at our sufferance. Primitives. The human's expression didn't change. Admiral Kextar of the Eternal Dominion, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. How do you know my name? Kextar demanded, but the transmission had ended. On the main display, long-range sensors finally resolved the approaching vessel's outline. What they revealed defied everything the Empire thought it knew about human capabilities. The human warship emerged from the void like a predator materializing from shadow. Its hull stretched 22 kilometers from bow to stern, dwarfing the Eternal Dominion and its escort squadron. But size alone wasn't what made Kextar's blood run cold. The vessel's design spoke of engineering principles the Empire had never encountered. Where Zephyrian ships followed traditional military architecture with heavy armor plating and external weapon mounts, the human vessel appeared organic. Its hull flowed in smooth curves that seemed to bend light around its edges. No visible weapons disrupted its surface, yet energy readings suggested power levels that exceeded their entire fleet combined. Impossible, Yithra whispered, her voice barely audible above the bridge's humming electronics. Our intelligence shows humans still using primitive materials for ship construction. Kextar stared at the tactical display, his tactical mind racing through calculations. The approaching vessel had emerged from hyperspace at point-blank range, something that should have been impossible given human understanding of spatial mechanics. Even more disturbing, their sensors detected no crew aboard the massive ship. Life sign analysis, he ordered. Negative biological signatures. Admiral, the vessel appears to be operating autonomously. An autonomous warship of that size required computational power beyond Zephyrian capabilities. Their most advanced artificial intelligence systems could barely manage destroyer-class vessels. A ship this massive would need thousands of organic crew members to function effectively. So, we're detecting multiple energy buildups across the human vessel's hull, the tactical officer reported, voice cracking with tension. The main display zoomed in on the alien ship surface. What had appeared smooth now revealed itself as composed of millions of microscopic hexagonal segments. As they watched, entire sections began glowing with contained energy that made their quantum torpedoes look like children's toys. All escorts, assume defensive formation, Kextar commanded. Raise shields to maximum power. The 12 Zephyrian vessels surrounding the Eternal Dominion activated their protective barriers, creating overlapping fields of crackling energy. Each ship represented the pinnacle of Empire military technology, armed with weapons capable of sterilizing planets. The human ship's response was immediate and devastating. Beams of coherent energy, thin as pencil but carrying the power of stellar cores, lanced out from the alien vessel. They didn't strike the Zephyrian shields directly. Instead, they seemed to phase through protective barriers as if they didn't exist, striking hull metal and converting matter directly into energy. The escort destroyer Swift Retribution simply vanished. No explosion, no debris field, just a brief flash of light where a kilometer-long warship had existed moments before. The crew of 300 souls disappeared without even having time to scream. Impossible! Kextar roared. Our shields are impenetrable to energy weapons. 2 more destroyers suffered the same fate, their hulls converted to pure energy in microseconds. The remaining escorts scattered, their captains desperately trying to understand how their most advanced defensive systems had been rendered useless. Admiral, the human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. Display it. The same human face appeared on their screens, expression unchanged despite having just eliminated 3 warships with casual ease. Admiral Kextar, you have failed to withdraw. We will now demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire's expansion ends here. You cannot defeat the entire Empire with 1 ship. Kextar snarled. We have 10,000 vessels. The human tilted his head slightly. Admiral, your empire classified humanity as a Type 0 civilization based on your observations of our public infrastructure. This classification was incomplete. On the tactical display, the human ship began to change. Its smooth hull rippled like water, sections flowing and reforming in patterns that hurt to observe directly. The vessel was reshaping itself in real time, adapting to combat requirements with technology that made Zephyrian science look primitive. For 300 years, your species has monitored our outer colonies and industrial facilities. The human continued. You catalogued our visible technology and dismissed us as irrelevant. What you fail to understand is that humanity's true development occurred in places your senses could never reach. New weapons emerged from the transforming hull. Structures that defied geometric logic extended from the ship's surface, creating firing positions that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Energy readings spiked beyond their instruments' ability to measure. While your empire expanded through conquest, humanity prepared for a war we knew was inevitable. We built our fleets in the deep spaces between stars, in dimensions your mathematics cannot describe, using principles your greatest scientists would call impossible. A cruiser captain's panicked voice crackled through the communication system. Admiral, our quantum torpedoes have no effect. They are passing through the human ship without detonating. Kextar watched in horror as his remaining escorts launched their most powerful weapons. The torpedoes, each capable of cracking a moon, simply phased through the human vessel's hull without causing any damage. It was as if the ship existed in normal space but remained immune to conventional physics. You see, Admiral, the human explained, his voice maddeningly calm, your empire made a fundamental error. You assumed that a species capable of spaceflight had reached the limits of their technological development. You never considered that we might have chosen to appear primitive while preparing for this moment. The human ship completed its transformation, now bristling with weapons that seemed to bend reality around them. Energy signatures indicated firepower levels that could threaten entire star systems. The vessel you're facing is a UES Retribution, the first of humanity's Titan-class warships. It was constructed using principles your science cannot comprehend, crewed by artificial intelligences that exceed your biological processing capabilities, and armed with weapons that operate outside conventional physics. Kextar felt his certainty crumbling. Everything the Empire believed about human limitations had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Admiral, long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures throughout this sector, the sensor operator reported, voice barely above a whisper. Multiple contacts approaching our position. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Dozens of energy signatures, each matching the impossible readings of the human ship, converged in a location from all directions. The 3rd battle group was flying directly into a trap that would make their 500 ships meaningless. How many vessels do you have? Kextar asked, dreading the answer. The human smiled for the first time, an expression that chilled Kextar to his core. Enough. The third battle group arrived exactly when Admiral Kextar had calculated they would, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 500 of the Empire's finest warships materialized in a display of military precision that had intimidated countless worlds into submission. Their crews, veterans of dozens of campaigns, had never faced a defeat. They lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Kextar watched from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as humanity revealed the true scope of their preparation. The UES Retribution had been joined by 17 more Titan-class vessels, each one a monument to technologies the Empire couldn't comprehend. But the human fleet wasn't limited to these massive ships. Smaller vessels, barely detectable on Zephyrian sensors, began materializing throughout the battle zone. These craft, each roughly the size of a heavy cruiser, moved with impossible agility. They phase in and out of normal space, striking from angles that shouldn't have existed and vanishing before return fire could be targeted. "Sir, our fleet is reporting total shield failure across all vessels," Commander Yithra announced, her voice hollow with disbelief. "The human weapons are bypassing our defensive systems entirely." The tactical display showed a massacre. Zephyrian dreadnoughts, ships that had served as a backbone of the Empire for 2 centuries, were being systematically dismantled. The human weapons didn't simply destroy their targets. They seemed to unweave the very bonds holding matter together, reducing proud warships to streams of elementary particles. Captain Velthor of the battlecruiser Iron appeared on the communication screen, his bridge burning behind him. "Admiral, we can't touch them. Our weapons pass through their hulls like they are made of empty space." Before Kextar could respond, Velthor's image dissolved into static. On the tactical display, the Iron Will's signature vanished, consumed by energies that converted its entire mass into pure light. "Admiral," the human commander spoke again, his image replacing the static on their screens. "Your fleet is dying because you're fighting a war using weapons designed for conventional physics. Humanity has moved beyond such limitations." Kextar gripped a command throne as another wave of Zephyrian ships simply ceased to exist. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing you can give willingly," the human replied. "Your empire has existed for 800 years, conquering 4 to 7 star systems and enslaving billions of sentient beings. You've built your civilization on the assumption that might makes right." One of the human Titan-class vessels began to change again, its hull flowing like liquid metal. But this transformation was different from the weapon configurations they'd witnessed earlier. The ship was becoming something else entirely, its form shifting into patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. "We're detecting massive gravitational distortions," the sensor operator reported, his voice cracking with strain. "The human ship is generating artificial gravity wells." The transformed vessel was creating localized distortions in space-time itself. Zephyrian ships caught within these fields found themselves stretched across impossible distances, their hulls torn apart by tidal forces that turned stellar physics into weapons. "Your species never developed beyond brute force solutions," the human continued, seemingly oblivious of the destruction his fleet was causing. "Bigger guns, thicker armor, more ships. You assumed that technological advancement meant building more powerful versions of the same basic tools." A Zephyrian superdreadnought, the Eternal Glory, launched its full arsenal at the nearest human vessel. Quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, and graviton beams struck the alien ship simultaneously in a display of firepower that could have shattered moons. The weapons simply passed through the target without effect, as if firing at a hologram. The human ship's response was immediate. A single beam of coherent energy, no thicker than a finger, touched the Eternal Glory's hull. The massive vessel, 7 kilometers of hardened battle steel and advanced alloys, underwent molecular breakdown so rapid that its death appeared instantaneous. "Humanity took a different path," the human explained, his calm voice contrasting sharply with the annihilation surrounding them. "Instead of building bigger hammers, we learned to step outside the framework that makes hammers necessary." Kextar watched his fleet die and realized a terrible truth. The Empire hadn't been fighting a primitive species. They'd been fighting a civilization so advanced that their technology appeared magical. The humans hadn't been hiding their capabilities out of fear. They'd been waiting for the Empire to reveal the full extent of its military might before demonstrating why conventional warfare had become obsolete. "Sir, we're receiving priority communications from Fleet Command," Yithra reported. High Admiral Zexton is demanding a full tactical report. Tell him the third battle group has been destroyed, Kextar said quietly. Destroyed? So, that's 500 ships. Gone. All of them. On the main display, the last of the third battle group's vessels winked out of existence. The entire engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes. 500 of the Empire's most advanced warships had been eliminated without causing a single casualty among the human forces. Admiral Kextar, the human commander said, his image dominating their screens. Your High Admiral is currently mobilizing the home fleet. 1,500 ships, including your most advanced dreadnoughts and the flagship Imperial Dominance. Kextar's 4 eyes widened in shock. That information was classified at the highest levels, known only to the Supreme Military Command. How do you know our fleet dispositions? We've been monitoring your communication for 3 centuries. Every tactical plan, every ship movement, every strategic decision has been catalogued and analyzed. Your Empire has no secrets from us. The implications hit Kextar like a physical blow. If humanity had been watching them for 300 years, recording everything, then this wasn't a desperate defensive action. It was a precisely planned campaign of conquest. The home fleet will arrive in this sector within 6 hours, the human continued. They'll find nothing but debris fields and the recorded testimony of your surviving crew members. High Admiral Zexton believes he can succeed where you fail because he'll bring overwhelming force to bear. Another human ship began transforming, its hull reconfiguring into something that hurt to observe directly. Energy readings spiked beyond their instrument ability to measure, suggesting weapons that could threaten entire star systems. It is wrong, of course, but his failure will serve our purposes. When news of 2 fleet defeats reaches the Imperial core, your government will finally understand that the age of Zephyrian expansion has ended. Kextar stared at the tactical display, now showing only his flagship and 3 surviving escorts surrounded by 17 impossible vessels. You mean to conquer the Empire? The human's expression grew cold. Admiral, your species has spent 8 centuries enslaving other worlds. You committed genocide against species that couldn't defend themselves, turned entire populations into forced labor, and built monuments to your glory from the bones of the innocent. The accusation stung because it was true. The Empire's expansion had been ruthless, treating conquered species as resources rather than sentient beings. But that was the nature of galactic politics. The strong rule the weak. What gives you the right to judge us? Kextar demanded. The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew harder. The same right you claimed when you decided which species deserved to exist freely. High Admiral Zexton materialized on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion via quantum teleportation, his ancient form crackling with residual energy from the emergency transport. His scarred face bore the weight of 8 centuries of military command, and his eyes held the cold fury of a predator whose dominance had been challenged. Report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. Kextar gestured to the tactical display showing debris fields where 2 fleets had died. The humans possess technology that renders our weapons ineffective. Their ships operate outside conventional physics. Impossible. Zexton studied the scattered wreckage through the viewports, his 4 eyes taking in the impossible scope of destruction. No species developed from primitive spaceflight to post-conventional physics in 3 centuries. Respectfully, High Admiral, they didn't develop this technology in 3 centuries. They already possessed it when we first encountered them. The statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Zexton turned slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge crew. You're suggesting that humanity deliberately appeared primitive during first contact. The evidence supports no other conclusion. Yithra interjected, her voice steady despite the implications. They've been monitoring our communication for 300 years. Every tactical decision, every fleet movement, every strategic assessment has been observed and catalogued. Zexton's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. The Empire's expansion had been built on accurate intelligence assessments. If their fundamental understanding of human capabilities was wrong, then every strategic decision for 3 centuries had been based on false information. Show me tactical recordings of the engagement, he ordered. The holographic display replayed the destruction of the third battle group. Zexthon watched in silence as 500 advanced warships were systematically eliminated by vessels that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. His expression grew darker with each passing second. Their weapons phase through our shields as if they don't exist, Kextar explained. Our return fire passes through their hulls without effect. They are not simply more advanced, High Admiral. They are operating according to completely different principles. All technology follows universal constants, Zexthon stated firmly. Mass, energy, space, and time govern all physical processes. These humans cannot have transcended fundamental reality. As if summoned by his words, the human commander's image appeared on their screens. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood figures representing dozens of different species, many of which the Empire had encountered during their expansion campaigns. High Admiral Zexthon, the human said, somehow knowing the senior officer's identity despite his unscheduled arrival. Allow me to introduce representatives of the Liberation Coalition. Kextar recognized several faces immediately. Commander Thelvar of the Nexus Worlds, whose people had been enslaved 40 years ago. General Kerwin of the Altian Republic, a species the Empire had driven to the edge of extinction. Captain Yaldana of the Crystalline Confederacy, survivors of a genocide the Empire preferred not to discuss. Liberation Coalition. Zexthon's voice carried a dangerous edge. 43 species that your Empire has conquered, enslaved, or attempted to exterminate, the human explained. For 3 centuries, while you believed humanity to be primitive and isolated, we've been building alliances with your victims. The tactical display shifted, revealing new contacts throughout the sector. But these weren't human vessels. Ships of dozens of different configurations appeared on their sensors, each design representing a species the Empire had wronged. The technology you find so impossible doesn't belong solely to humanity, the human continued. It represents a combined scientific achievements of 4 to 4 species working together for a common goal. Zexthon's certainty began to crack. The Empire had encountered each of these species individually, defeating them through superior numbers and technology. But if they had been secretly collaborating, sharing knowledge and resources, the Crystalline Confederacy developed dimensional phase technology before you drove them from their homeworld. Commander Yaldana spoke, her translated voice filled with controlled hatred. The Nexus worlds created gravity manipulation systems centuries before your conquest. The Altarians perfected matter conversion before you began your genocide. We preserve their knowledge, the human added. While your empire destroyed their worlds and enslaved their populations, we offered them sanctuary and the resources to continue their research. The implications staggered Kextar. Humanity hadn't developed impossible technology in isolation. They become the repository for the scientific achievements of every species the Empire had conquered, combining their knowledge into weapons that transcended conventional understanding. You built your coalition on hatred, Zexthon observed, his tactical mind grasping for some advantage. Such alliances are unstable. They fracture under pressure. The human smiled coldly. Our alliance is built on justice, High Admiral. We've had 3 centuries to work through our differences while preparing for this moment. So, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from multiple vectors, the sensor operator reported. Configuration unknown, but the energy outputs exceed anything in our database. The tactical display revealed the approaching threat. Hundreds of vessels were converging on their position from all directions, their designs representing technologies from dozens of different species. But these weren't the ships the Empire had faced in previous campaigns. They were hybrid vessels, combining the best innovation from multiple civilizations into configurations that defy classification. The home fleet will arrive in 4 hours, Zexthon stated, his voice regaining some of its earlier confidence. 1,500 ships, including our most advanced dreadnoughts. We know, the human replied. We've been tracking their movement since they left the Imperial Core. Admiral Vexcalen command from the flagship Imperial Dominance, which your intelligence services believe to be invulnerable to conventional attack. Zexthon's 4 eyes narrowed. That information was classified beyond the highest security levels. Only 5 individuals in the entire Empire knew the home fleet's exact composition and command structure. Your intelligence network has been compromised for longer than we suspected, he said quietly. High Admiral, Your empire never understood the species you conquered. Commander Thelvar spoke, his scarred features displaying centuries of suppressed anger. You saw us as primitive because we didn't match your technological paradigms. You never realized that different doesn't mean inferior. A new vessel appeared on their sensors, larger than even the human Titan-class ships. Its design incorporated architectural elements from every member species of the Liberation Coalition, creating something that looked like a living work of art rather than a military vessel. The Coalition flagship Unity, the human announced. 15 years of construction using combined knowledge of 4 to 4 species. It represents everything your empire could have achieved if you had chosen cooperation over conquest. The massive vessel began to change, its hull flowing and reforming in patterns that incorporated dimensional phase technology, gravity manipulation, matter conversion, and principles that the Empire couldn't identify. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement as weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously came online. High Admiral, Kextar said quietly, I recommend we contact the Imperial Corps and advise immediate surrender negotiations. Zexthon's scarred face twisted with rage. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender. Then prepare to watch it die, the human said simply. Then prepare to watch it die, the human said simply. The home fleet arrived with the majesty of absolute power, 1,500 vessels dropping out of hyperspace in a formation that had never known defeat. The flagship Imperial Dominance led the Armada, its 12-kilometer hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Vex Kalen had commanded this fleet for 50 years, and his reputation for tactical brilliance was matched only by his ruthlessness in combat. High Admiral Zexthon watched from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as his most powerful military force prepared to engage an enemy that had already demonstrated the futility of conventional warfare. The tactical display showed the Coalition fleet waiting in perfect formation, their hybrid vessels radiating energy signatures that defied analysis. Admiral Vex Kalen, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Zexthon transmitted to the home fleet commander. The enemy possesses capabilities beyond our current understanding. Vex Kalen's image appeared on screen, his expression showing the supreme confidence of a commander who had never lost a battle. High Admiral, with respect, 1,500 ships can overwhelm any defensive system through sheer firepower concentration. Admiral, I have personally witnessed the destruction of 723 vessels in less than 10 minutes. Their weapons operate outside conventional physics. Then we'll adapt our tactics accordingly, Vex Kalen replied dismissively. The Empire doesn't retreat from primitives. Kextar watched the exchange with growing dread. The Empire's greatest weakness had always been its arrogance. Even faced with impossible evidence, their commanders couldn't accept that a lesser species might surpass Zephyrian capabilities. Admiral Vex Kalen. The human commander's voice interrupted their communication, his image appearing alongside the home fleet commanders. Your High Admiral is attempting to save your lives. I recommend you listen to him. Vex Kalen's 4 eyes blazed with fury. Human scum, you will address me with proper respect. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the United Aerospace Navy, the human replied calmly. I hold the rank of Fleet Admiral in the Liberation Coalition. You may use either title. The casual correction sent waves of shock through both ships. The Empire's intelligence had never identified any human military leaders, let alone fleet-level commanders. If this human held such authority, it suggested a military hierarchy that had remained completely hidden for 3 centuries. Impossible! Vex Kalen snarled. Humans lack the organizational capacity for fleet-level command structures. Admiral, your empire has based its assessments on observation of our outer colonies and civilian infrastructure, Chen explained patiently. You never detected our military installations because they exist in dimensional spaces your senses cannot access. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. Not hundreds of vessels, but thousands. Ships of every conceivable design materialized throughout the sector, their hull configurations representing technologies from species the Empire had encountered across 8 centuries of expansion. But more shocking than their numbers was their crew composition. The communication channels filled with voices speaking in languages the Empire had thought extinct. Species that had been declared eliminated were manning advanced warships, their populations somehow preserved despite genocidal campaigns. The Velthari Collective, Zexthon whispered, recognizing ship designs from a species the Empire had exterminated 400 years ago. The Catherian dynasty, Kextar added, identifying vessels from another supposedly extinct civilization. We saved them all, Chen said simply. Every species your empire marked for destruction found sanctuary in human space. Their population survived, their cultures endured, and their scientific knowledge contributed to what you now face. Admiral Vex Kalen stared at the tactical display showing thousands of vessels crewed by the Empire's supposed victims. His confidence finally began to crack as he realized the scope of what they confronted. This is militarily impossible, he stated, though his voice had lost its earlier certainty. The logistics alone would require resources beyond any single star system. You're correct, Chen agreed, which is why we didn't limit ourselves to a single star system. While your empire expanded through conquest, the Liberation Coalition expanded through invitation. We now control territories in 17 different galaxies. The statement hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Intergalactic expansion required technology beyond anything the Empire had imagined possible. Even their most advanced ships couldn't cross the void between galaxies. 17 galaxies, Zexthon repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. The Andromeda Collective welcomed us after we helped them repel an invasion from their local equivalent of your empire. The Magellanic Republics offered us sanctuary worlds in exchange for defensive technologies. Each new alliance brought us into contact with other threatened civilizations. Chen's image was joined by figures whose appearances defied description. Beings of pure energy, crystalline entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and organic forms that challenged the very concept of biological life. Admiral Vex Kalen, one of the energy beings, spoke, its translated voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. Your empire represents a pattern we have encountered in 47 different galaxies. A species achieves military dominance, then uses that power to subjugate others until they encounter a coalition powerful enough to stop them. The pattern always ends the same way. A crystalline entity added, its form shifting through geometric configurations that hurt to observe directly. The conquering species faces a choice, integration into the galactic community as equals, or extinction. Vex Galen's tactical displays showed the impossibility of his situation. His 1,500 ships face a fleet that numbered in the millions, crewed by species possessing technologies that render conventional military doctrine obsolete. What are your terms? He asked quietly, his pride finally cracking under the weight of absolute defeat. Unconditional surrender of all Zephyr military forces, Chen replied. Immediate withdrawal from all conquered territories. Complete dismantling of your slave-based economy. War crime tribunals for military commanders responsible for genocide. And if we refuse, then your species joins the extinct civilizations you created over the past 8 centuries. The threat carried absolute conviction. These beings had the power to eliminate the Empire completely, and their moral framework clearly justified such action. Zexthon realized that his species stood at the same crossroads they had forced upon dozens of others. High Admiral, Kextar said quietly, our choice is surrender or extinction. There is no tactical solution to this situation. Zexthon stared at the tactical display showing the end of Zephyrian military supremacy. 8 centuries of expansion, conquest, and domination had culminated in this moment of absolute defeat. But perhaps defeat was too simple a word for what they faced. Captain Chen, he said formally, the Zephyrian Empire formally requests terms of conditional surrender. There are no conditional terms, Chen replied firmly. Your empire's crimes are too extensive for negotiation. However, your species will be offered the same opportunity for redemption that we've extended to other reformed conquering civilizations. Which is? Integration into the galactic community as equals. Your people possess genuine scientific and cultural achievements that could benefit everyone. But first, you must renounce the ideology that made you conquerors. The communication channels filled with voices from species the Empire had wronged, but their words weren't calls for vengeance. Instead, they spoke of rehabilitation, of helping the Zephyrian people understand the value of cooperation over domination. Admiral Vex Kalen, Chen continued, order your fleet to power down weapons and prepare for escort to designated surrender coordinates. Your crews will be treated according to interstellar law, not the standards your empire applied to prisoners. Vex Kalen looked at his tactical display one final time, then slowly nodded. All ships, power down weapon systems. Prepare for surrender protocols. Across the home fleet, 1,500 warships went dark as their crews accepted the end of their empire's military dominance. The Zephyrian age of conquest had ended not with a glorious battle, but with a recognition that their victims had become strong enough to demand justice. The transition period will be difficult, Chen said, his voice carrying unexpected compassion. Your people will need to learn new ways of relating to other species. But if you're willing to change, you'll find that cooperation creates possibilities that conquest never could. High Admiral Zexon looked out at the Coalition fleet surrounding his defeated forces and saw something he'd never expected. Hope. Not for continued Zephyrian dominance, but for his species' chance to become something better than conquerors. Captain Chen, he said quietly, the Zephyrian Empire formally surrenders. We place ourselves under Coalition authority and request guidance in learning to become worthy of galactic citizenship. The war was over. The real work of building peace was just beginning. They said the human ship didn't exist until it ripped through their Armada.